Hi, I'm Alex.
And I'm Shane.
And this is the RPM podcast.
And welcome back to our second launch reaction show of the 2021 season. And today we will be looking into the AlphaTauri AT-02. In this podcast today, we'll be discussing the launch itself, all 3.5 minutes of it. And then we'll move on to how the car looks, any visual changes, and what our thoughts are going forward into the 2021 season.
Straight off the bat then, this video, like you already mentioned, as short as it is, in complete opposite style to the McLaren launch. It is dark and brooding and almost immediately shows off the car. So it's, the exact opposite to the McLaren launch in almost every way. It's come off the back of a pretty good first season for AlphaTauri. I say first season, obviously it's a continuation of Toro Rosso, but now with its fashion brand, I say title sponsor, I guess they kind of own the team, or Red Bull own the team and AlphaTauri the title sponsor. It's not 100% clear what it is.
It's a strange one, isn't it, when it comes to AlphaTauri? Are they the title sponsor? Are they the team owners? Who really knows? It's we'll just go with it for the time being.
But it was interesting as well that, again, unlike the McLaren launch, there were no masks or even so much as an allusion to COVID. It was all very isolated and a bit sort of impersonal and enigmatic, and lots of people standing around being dead-eyed and expressionless, and lots of looking very serious. I guess that doesn't really work on the podcast version, but basically I'm making a dead-eyed expression, which is what everybody in the video is doing. What did you think of it? What was your thoughts on this very, very short showing?
Well, like you said, completely the polar opposite to the McLaren launch, which had the drivers talking, interaction with the fans, lots of press, lots of, allusion to COVID and the current pandemic. Dropping into AlphaTauri, I think it was a 3-minute video, and we probably got about 45 seconds of the car itself, or maybe halfway through. That was the last time we saw the car until the very end. It was, I don't know, like you said, F1 launches are strange, and we continue to say that on our second launch of the season so far, and I'm sure it actually might be the strangest launch of the season. You never know, but we've got another 8 cars to go. What do I think of it? Yeah, it was fine. It was 3 minutes it was a fashion statement. That's what it is. At some points, I wasn't quite sure whether it was a car launch or whether it was a fashion launch. I guess
both, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's both, given that they're, it's a fashion brand. It just, I don't know.
I don't know anything about clothes, but they looked expensive. That's the only thing I could say. I understand that the AlphaTauri clothing is, £300 for a jacket kind of thing. So
yeah, I'm not that kind of guy, to be honest. I mean, that's the launch itself. Have you got any other comments on the launch? And should we just move straight on to how the car looks and the differences?
Yeah, there's not too much to say. Not too much to say about the launch itself. It was just, like I say, a bit impersonal and enigmatic. And also important to note that the car that we see in the video, I believe, is the 2020 car with the new livery on it. So obviously they've got the renders and they've got the other photos, which is the new car itself. But I think in the video it is the 2020 car.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe they're hiding something going forward.
Yeah, maybe. I think also the music. Some of the music reminded me of like Unreal Tournament. If you've ever played that.
Yes, yeah, I get what you mean.
Don't know what it is, but some of the music was a bit kind of like, I don't know, a bit sort of industrial and menacing. But yeah, not too much to say about the launch. So let's go straight onto the car itself. Now for the AT-02, I believe AlphaTauri did have the option of building it with Red Bull's rear suspension from last year.
Okay.
But without having to spend any development tokens either. But they've ultimately chose to stick with their existing setup, which is based on the 2019 the RB15's rear end. It seems that AlphaTauri in general have a slightly different concept to their car to the Red Bull, so I guess that's why they've stuck with it. And last year the car was a solid midfield contender. And obviously some predominantly it was standout performances from Gasly that produced most of the good points finishes, as well as this historic win at Monza. So I think they've probably tried to keep a lot of what technically was going on with the car as they can, because it seemed like it was a very drivable car. It was very agreeable. And
It
I
clearly
think
worked well in some situations, and it would take a massive change to go down a different route, especially if it's the last year of these current regulations. Stick to what you know almost, and try and hope for another couple of weird and wonderful races where you can capitalize on the unfortunate events which happened last year. See if they can get another podium or another win.
Yeah, their technical director, Jody Eggington, I think his name is. He was saying that in the previous years, like as Toro Rosso, they were sometimes struggling to match what they wanted the car to do and what it was actually doing out on track. Whereas they didn't have that issue with the AT-01, and it seems that they've hit a bit of a sweet spot. So yeah, like you say, if it ain't broke, don't change it. There's only so much they can do given the sort of relatively stable regulations. As for what is actually technically different, what stuck out to you first on the car? There's not a whole lot that's different.
I mean, apart from the livery itself, we'll talk about the design spec in the renders, and for me, it was the rear of the car, past the side pods, going down the rear of the engine cover to the rear wing. Seems a lot tighter. Seems a lot more just aerodynamically, pleasing. There's a couple. We'll share them on Twitter if you don't follow us, and do at RacePerMinute on Twitter, and we'll share these images. But it definitely hugs the engine a lot more, which makes it obviously a lot tighter and would hopefully help aerodynamics. And there are some subtle changes, but obviously that complements the regulations we're going into this year. So the floor itself is touching a little bit. The side pod has changed ever so slightly. It's got a couple more flaps instead of it just being one straight line, which is what it was last year. Again, I think you can only take so much from the renders. You don't want to be showing all your new technical advances like 2 weeks before pre-season testing. So I'm sure a lot of these are, even just put in to throw the opposition, or, they're not going to what I'm trying to get is that they're not going to show everyone their brand new car without some hidden gems, tucked away. So from what I can tell, it looks like a better design.
Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned the changes to overcome the lack of, just the changes in the rear floor. Also seems to have a slimmer nose and a sort of reprofiling of the cape that's underneath. Everybody going for that Mercedes slim nose now. I mean, it works. It clearly is effective.
Yeah, why not try and copy it?
Yeah, and I also understand that the team have spent their other development tokens on front suspension changes and slightly different barge boards. You can see that the barge boards coming off the side seem to be ever so slightly different, but it's also a little bit misleading because if you compare them to the old car, they're different colors as well. So sometimes that can make certain elements appear different when they're not. They're just a different color.
Speaking
nice
of the
thing as
color
well,
itself,
I was just going to say on the AlphaTauri website, there's a nice little 3D render that kind of drives along the track, and you can look around it in 3D and move it around.
Very
Did you see
nice.
that?
No, I
Yeah, it
haven't
was
seen
quite
it yet,
nice.
but I certainly will.
Kind of move it around. It was quite decent actually. Graphically not very good, but it's running in a browser, I guess. So
You can only do so much.
yeah. You were saying?
But what I want to talk about is the livery, which is the most obvious change going forward this year. And if I was going to pick a team which I didn't think was going to have such an obvious change in livery, it was probably going to be along the McLaren AlphaTauri kind of route, and obviously with Ferrari and Red Bull as well. But they've almost just done a complete flip. So last year's car was predominantly white with a bit of, navy blue. And now they've flipped it, and it's more blue than it is white. And I quite like it. It looks good.
Yeah, the livery has the navy blue, which previously only extended to the flat section of the cockpit. It now goes all the way down to the nose and onto the front wing, and like you say, now makes it the dominant color, especially from the top and the front. And you have this nice pinstripe that follows the edge of the blue along the contours of the bodywork.
Yep.
And they have these white rims as well. They've gone for coloured rims.
I really like those.
Yeah, they look very, very nice. I definitely like that. More coloured rims in Formula One, please.
I also like the Honda logo on the side. Just
Still
it's a bit
there?
of a throwback. Yeah, just a nice bright red Honda logo. It's be a shame to lose that next year. I'm sure we'll do a video on that in a couple of weeks. But
still
it
no
looks
red
good.
H on the front though. I wanted my red H, but I didn't get it.
You did actually. Yeah, you mentioned that a few months ago, didn't you? But Unfortunately not. It's just a white H all over the place.
And the AlphaTauri logo on the engine cover has been moved up a bit. AlphaTauri now sits underneath it.
Mm.
And it has this effect of like snipping off parts of the logo. And yeah, I don't think I like that as much as when it was on the previous car. It was more in the middle, and the sweep of the letters kind of continued quite naturally into the cockpit space. And now it looks like it looks like more of an afterthought now.
Yeah. And you've mentioned about the AlphaTauri logo on the engine cover being changed, also on the rear wing in the AT-01 version of this livery. You've got AlphaTauri on the rear wing, and now on the 02 version, you've got Honda at the top of the rear wing with what I could only assume says AlphaTauri underneath it. I haven't got a great image there, but instead of it saying AlphaTauri, instead of it saying AlphaTauri, it says Honda on the rear wing. So they're definitely pushing that Honda branding as well, if not more this year, given it is their last year with the outfit. So some subtle changes on the livery. In overall, I quite enjoy them. I welcome these changes. It's going to look quite good on the car, especially as I'm looking on my screen now. I've got the video playing in the background with Gasly getting in and out of the car, and I've got the renders here. And I think the car looks better from personally in real life. Obviously, this is the 2020 version of the car with the 2021 livery, but the livery definitely looks better in free cam than it does on a digital render. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that on track and seeing it under different lights.
Yeah, there's a rather retro feel to this livery, especially with the pinstripe and the coloured rims. The AT-01 was very sleek and fashionable, and yeah, the 02 has a bit more of a throwback look to it. Again, it has got a bit of an early 2000s Williams look to it.
Yes, it does actually.
Maybe a bit Tyrrell-esque as well. So yeah, I do like it. I do really like it. I think it's grown on me the more I've seen it, and I think it will probably look even better out on track. Overall, I think I prefer last year's livery, and I know when we did our awards, my favourite livery of last year was the AlphaTauri. And I think sometimes it's hard to consider liveries in isolation. It's very easy to compare them to the rest of the grid, naturally, because they're the cars that you're seeing them alongside all the time.
Yeah.
And last year we had a lot of white cars, so I can understand somebody looking at the grid and not immediately picking out the AlphaTauri. But I think in isolation that was my favourite one.
Yeah, I remember we did a video on that, and I agreed with you at the time. And I wonder going forward this year. Obviously, we've only had 2 car launches so far, but how do you think it will stack up? Do you think it will be as good as?
There's no way to tell until I see all the other cars. But
very true.
Yeah, I still think that the pinstripe, the white rims are great additions. The matte navy blue still looks great. There's probably a bit too much of it, and I liked the more contrast they had last time. But side on, apart from the altered main logo, I think I prefer it to last year's car. But the top down and isometric and front views aren't as good, and yeah, there's just a little bit too much of that dark blue. But it's still a very nice livery. I do very much like it.
They've removed, looking at the side view now, they've obviously got the AlphaTauri logo on the engine cover, like you said. But last year they had that AlphaTauri logo on the end plate of the wing and on the side of the rear wing as well. But that's been replaced with just the words AlphaTauri now instead of the logo itself. So I wonder what sparked that change. Any thoughts at all?
Yeah, just I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to get maybe they thought that there wasn't enough association with the name itself, and I don't know. Repetition legitimizes, as they say in music. So
absolutely. So
I guess you just have as much of that as possible, and people will remember it. We've also got Honda on the rear wing instead of AlphaTauri as well. So yeah, just subtle changes. Having the singular logo helps to emphasize something that you want to be as iconic. Whether or not it actually comes out that way is a matter for people in the future to decide.
I guess they're trying to move away from that Red Bull kind of Toro Rosso branding as well. They've got their own entity at them, with the logo splattered all over the car. It's still very reminiscent of the Toro Rosso days, and people will still get confused. Even the commentators still get confused occasionally. But I guess with AlphaTauri written all over the car, it's going to be less likely for someone to call it a Toro Rosso. So maybe that's a strategic marketing move to make sure they develop
they want
their
to
own
be
brand.
Like they've said that they want to be like a sort of an equivalent, or not like a B team anymore. So I guess it helps emphasize that as well.
They don't want to be a sister team, do they? They don't want to be the second team to Red Bull anymore. They want to be their own entity and challenge Red Bull for challenge Red Bull for position. There will not be any. AlphaTauri is a sibling of the Red Bull. It needs to play second fiddle. They're there to to get as many points as possible. So I quite enjoy it. I mean, I disagree. I think I prefer the 2021 look as it stands so far, but they're very similar. There's not much else I can say on it. It does look a bit vintage, mind you. That's what I quite like about it. It's definitely a nice look.
And just a little bit before we finish, then, what do you think about AlphaTauri's chances this year? They look like they finished 7th last year, didn't they? They arguably could have done even better, and I think that
it's definitely
Gasly was fantastic, and maybe Kvyat could have brought a little bit more. There was definitely a lot of potential in that car. What do you think of their chances in 2021?
I would like to think they do better than 7th this year, but we've got to be a little bit more realistic. So last year, like you said, Gasly was the front of that team, scored almost double points than his teammate, which goes to show that the car had the potential to score more points than it did gather throughout the year. Now, with a new driver coming in, it's going to be hard to move up the grid even more because the lack of experience. Potentially, Kvyat was a decent driver, and I'm sure he had some good and bad races. But with a brand new driver coming in, look at Latifi, for example, and how he's struggled at the first start of the 2020 season. Definitely improved as the 2020 season went on, and I think we'll see the same throughout this lineup going forward. It's a shame because the car probably does have the pace to score some decent points every single race. Gasly proved that last year. I'm really interested to see how Gasly does this year. But the car itself is good, but we've got to remember that other teams are making huge strides as well. So where the AlphaTauri was probably, was decent last year, McLaren were also very good. Ferrari, they're making their comeback this year, hopefully, a little bit more competitive. So there'll be fewer points for the AlphaTauri to score. Ferrari are running in their natural position in the top 3. Who knows? And also Williams, they've had their new investors and their new sponsors come through over the last 6 months. So can they channel that money into performance for the 2021 season, or will we be seeing a 2022 leap forward for Williams? You just don't know. And it's the same with Haas as well. All these cars are trying to move forward, and this is the last season of the current regulation. So it's whether they choose to sit on their current car and save money and put it towards the 2022 development, or they're going to continue to develop their car and grab an extra couple of million by moving up the points table at the end of this year. And I've not really answered your question in reality. That just goes to show that how interesting this 2021 season will be with all the changes in all these cars moving forward. I'd be happy if they got 6th place. I think that would be a really good place for them, given they've got a new driver. So 6th place is where I'm going to put my money at the moment. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think AlphaTauri would do very well to do better than they did last year, because you already mentioned a resurgent Ferrari. They were ailing throughout most of the season and still managed to bag 6th place themselves. So I think AlphaTauri would do very well to do even better. With any luck, though, the midfield will get even tighter. Overall, it will move up closer to Red Bull and Mercedes, and will be tighter as well. So I hope to see AlphaTauri in the midst of that. It will be nice to see multiple teams fighting for those points finishes and podiums as well. So that's the hope. But yeah, I think they will have to do very well in order to do better than 7th. And with Yuki Tsunoda coming in, it's clearly proven that he's a great driver. He's not really been that long outside of Japan, I believe. I don't think that he's only spent a few years actually racing in the European leagues, but he did have a race-winning season when he was in F2 and has proven to have a lot of potential. I understand that they've put some extra time and development into his racing in particular. Maybe he's been spending some extra time in the simulator, as well as we saw him driving last year's AlphaTauri in winter. It was in sort of November, December time, I think it was. And hopefully they will continue to fight in the same places they were before. All right, that was the AlphaTauri AT-02 then. What do you think of the livery? Your thoughts on it? If there's anything we've missed or anything that you want to say about the livery or about the car in general, then do let us know. You can comment on the video if you're on YouTube, or you can send us a message on Twitter at RacePerMinute, or send us an email, info@raceperminute.com. If you are watching us on YouTube then and you like what we do, then you can subscribe, leave us a comment, like the video, all that usual stuff. Give us a rating and a review wherever it is you get your podcast, because that really helps us out and just reminds us that there are people listening. And we see the stats, but sometimes it's easy to look at it and think, well, it's just a load of bots. Sometimes it's hard not to feel that way. So when people do get in touch, it's nice to remind ourselves that people are listening, and it gives us a way to share our opinions and we can hear what you think. And that's really what drives what we do at RacePerMinute. We want to just find out how people feel about it and have a conversation. As well as getting in contact via email or Twitter. If you really like what we do, you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/RacePerMinute, where for as little as £1, you can support the show, support the costs of running the show. Obviously, we have quite high standards here at RacePerMinute. We want to make sure it's as good as it possibly can be, and that is not cheap, unfortunately. So if you really want to help us out, that's the best way to do it, as well as getting various bonuses like chatting with us on Discord and the merchandise you can get hold of, and lots to be found there. So patreon.com/RacePerMinute. Who's coming up next in the livery race? Is it, I don't remember.
I believe
Alfa Romeo, I think?
It is Alfa Romeo. Yep.
So yeah, we'll see you next time for the Alfa Romeo launch. Thanks very much.
See you next time.